Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the Board Game Design Cuppa. I'm your host, Matthew Dunstan. It's Wednesday, the 30th of June, 2021. How is everyone doing on this fine Wednesday morning? Morning, Bass. How are you going? Welcome, welcome. Yes, as you can see, I'm in my normal man with a phone. Not really a phone, I guess, but back in Prague anyway, is the point. And yeah, apologies for again, trying to work out how I can do lighting. I look a little bit dark, but yeah, hopefully it's not too bad. Yeah, hi Nicholas, how you going? Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so how's everyone doing? How is the last week of June? I know it's been very hot here since I came back. I know in the US, if anyone's on, especially I guess on the West Coast, who might be up still, it's yeah, I know it's been really tough for some folk out there. So hope you're well and cool enough wherever you may be. Thankfully, we had a bit of a storm last night and some rain, which has cooled everything down quite a bit, which is nice. So yeah, so yes, I trying to be a bit more regular. I've actually 2 streams in a row. Once a week. I'm almost back onto a normal schedule. So let's see how it all goes. But yeah, today, just as always, it's a chill time to chat about all things game design, board game industry. That's hello. I hope I'm back. Yeah, okay. Had some problem with StreamYard. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see me. Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, we're back. Good. Thanks, Bass. Yeah, so yeah, we could chat about. But as always, I'm open to any topics, any things anybody wants to talk about. So feel free to put anything in the chat, and I shall do my best to answer that and to go for that. In terms of news and things, there's not too much news. Hey Arnold, how you going? Well, actually, that's one thing. The Card Crawl Adventures, the kind of video digital app game that I've been designing with Arnold of Tiny Touch Tales. We're still in, I guess, would you call it beta or something, or kind of the testing phase? But if you head over to Arnold's Twitter feed, Tiny Touch Tales, you can try out the game. We're looking for people to be testing it at the moment. So if anyone's interested in trying, it's sort of a roguelike deck builder app, something like yes, early playtest, yeah. So something a little bit like things like Slay the Spire, but with a bit of the kind of like puzzly card play that you'd expect from Arnold's other games like Card Crawl, Card Thief, things like that. I'm really happy with I think where we are actually. It's nothing to do with me. It's all of Arnold's very hard work on it, and especially in terms of making it look. There's been lots of improvements in like art and appearance and animation and all these sort of things in the past weeks. So yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, yeah, if you get a chance, Nicola, I think board game folk might quite enjoy it. I think there's lots of those. It's like a very board gamey app, if that makes sense, or some of the same sensibilities. So that's been a lot of fun, and yeah, it's moving forward as we go. I mean, I just trust Arnold knows what he's doing. So I'm in the back seat, but I'm quite happy to be there. So So there's that. There's also we are allowed to talk about it now. So there's a game that Dave Neal and I have with Ravensburger, which I have mentioned a little bit on the stream, and it's called Echoes. And as of tomorrow, although it appears to be on the online shop in Germany, it'll be available in Target in the US and in Thalia bookstores in Germany. So they have like a 3-month exclusive in these kind of like big box mass market kind of stores. And from the echoes, like a sound echo. So I'll show it. Let's see if I can share my screen properly. Yeah, hopefully this will be it. Okay, am I going to see it here? Yeah. So this is the game. Echoes like the sound. So it's an audio narrative adventure or audio mystery game. Hi Vez, how you going? Welcome. So currently it's launching with 3 different titles. So they're a little bit like, exit or adventure games where each is a different kind of story, a different scenario. It's, single play in the box, but nothing's destroyed. So you can, pass it on to anybody you want. Is there a well? I don't get the joke about a well, I'm afraid. And there are 3 different boxes. There's the microchip, which is sort of a futuristic, in the distant future, civilization will be in ruins. And I probably should explain the actual game. The idea is that the players play almost like mediums who are able to effectively, when they have an object, they can sense memories or things that happened in that object's past. And that's represented by in the game, you have a set of cards. And I'll see if I can kind of zoom a bit. You have a set of cards which represent different objects that the players essentially have. And through your powers, you scan the card with your smartphone, and it'll play an audio track. It'll play a sound. It might be short or long. And that sound has to do with what was happening around that object or while that object was being used somewhere in the story. And your goal basically is to fit all these cards, these different objects, in order to tell the story in the correct order, and to work out essentially what happened. And there's a way to effectively, with the app, you'll test different combinations. So there are what we call pillars. There are 6 pillars in each box, and each pillar is essentially like a subsection of the story, and it's associated with 3 other cards. So you have to basically get the pillar and then the 3 next cards in order, scan them all together, and then it'll tell you whether you're correct or not. And then, of course, at the very end, once you have all the pillars worked out, then you have to work out which order the pillars actually occur in the story. And as the game goes along, when you kind of get a pillar correct, then you'll get to hear effectively like the full audio of that part of the story, and you'll actually might hear some secret parts that were happening in between objects or something that you wouldn't hear the first time. And so by the end of the game, you'll have the full audio of the full story, and you'll be able to work out what happened effectively. So, super simple in a way to play. It's just literally, your phone will essentially recognize the image of the card. So there's like no QR codes or anything. You just hold it over the card, and you'll hear the noise. And then you've got to try and get them in the right order. That's basically it. Yeah, something like it. I guess that's actually not a bad. It's not a bad thing. Actually, a big inspiration for some of the checking, and I guess something was a game called Return of the Obra Dinn. Definitely the way we check. You check by testing triples of cards, which is something from Return of the Obra Dinn. And yeah, so we're sort of inspired by that. So this is with Dave Neal, I should say. Who is obviously well known. He designed a couple of Unlock scenarios and the most recent Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Baker Street Irregulars box. And we've worked on a lot of different stuff together. So Nicholas asked, at what stage of implementation was when you pitched it? Yeah, so we just had a sort of a sample scenario. It was shorter than what, I can't quite remember how many cards it was. It was probably something like 15 cards. And we had recorded sounds. We'd made little soundtracks for each of the cards, and so it was basically playable as obviously there was none of the technology with like scanning it with your phone or something. So you would just you'd select the card, and then on your computer you'd select the sound file to play. But the actual gameplay was the same as it is now. So So yeah, we sort of pitched the this kind of like demo scenario around, and yeah, Ravensburger really liked it, and then from then we worked on developing 3 scenarios for the initial launch, and we're currently working on a few more, because hopefully there will be more in the series. So yeah, I was saying this one is the microchip, so it's kind of a futuristic mystery, like civilization is ruined. You have to kind of work out what happened. There is the dancer, which is sort of a classical set in like early 20th century in Scotland. And there's a mystery of a ghost in a house, and you've got to work out what happened to her, basically. And then finally, you have the cocktail, which is set in sort of during Prohibition in New York, and it's in a speakeasy. You've got to work out, this sort of like mob boss, who is this mob boss, and what have they been doing, and things like that. So yeah, those are the 3 different games that they're initially launched, and as I said, they're available for the first 3 months just in Target in the US and in Thalia, I don't know say, which apparently is a large bookstore chain in Germany. So, but then after that, from September, they'll be available kind of everywhere in normal game shops and things like that. And sort of launching in English and German simultaneously at the start. I hope. I haven't seen proof. I think this is pretty good proof it's in Thalia because you can buy it online now. But I'm not sure about Target. But we're assured that hopefully it will be there very soon. So so that's very exciting. And yeah, I guess we will just see how that goes. You never, with all these things, you just sort of hope for things. Federico just wants to say Lost Ruins of Arnak. Did you mean to copy that into the chat? I was like, I haven't designed that. I would love to design Lost Ruins of Arnak. But hey, Federico, nice to see you anyway. Okay, so yeah, no, exactly. It is, it's meant to be a pretty easy to purchase, easy to travel with, not destructible, so easy to pass on to other people kind of game. So yeah, hopefully it'll find its audience. I think it's a nice thing that you really can play with anybody, and like there's very few rules, and it's a fun story. We were sort of, Dave and I were thinking it's almost like the old radio plays that you would have on the BBC or of course in other countries as well, because you're kind of listening to this radio play and trying to piece it together kind of thing. And there are obviously clues in the cards and the objects as well that you have to kind of piece together as well. So yeah, so let's see what happens. But fingers crossed. So yeah, those are the main. Oh, I see. Sorry. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thanks, Federico. Oh, thank you for following. I haven't played Lost Ruins of Arnak, so I can't really. No. Don't worry. Would you believe I'm not new to this, but I haven't set up any of the kind of like alerts which tell me what's going on. And I have to remember to look at the Twitch panel. Yeah, one day I will switch over to something a bit more sophisticated. So I have to review the cover. The cover is quite exciting. It reminds me a little bit of Relic Runners, actually. There's something about the 2 covers, adventuring in the jungle kind of thing. I think it's perfectly fine. I very much like to try it. But yeah, it's just too many games, too little time, or imagine I had played it and review your preconceptions. It looks interesting. I think it's one of those games which falls squarely into like I think I would be interested to play that, but I don't know if it's going to crack into the, upper echelons of that style of experience. I've got a lot of games that take, 60 to 90 minutes and are Euro-y kind of games. And they're a style of game I like a lot, but more and more I realize, like I'm getting a bit, I don't know if folks get this way, you get a bit set in your, you have your favorites, and it gets harder and harder for games to kind of break into that. And if they're just okay, you kind of don't give them as much of a go, because you're like, well, but I could play this other game that I really love again, and I know I like it, and this one was just okay, so I might not explore it more or something like that. But it does seem like a fresh kind of mix of things. So yeah, I would definitely try it if offered. But yeah, I just haven't picked it up. Even though I guess it should be even more available in the Czech Republic because, of course, it's from Czech Games Edition. But anyway, but we'll see. But I do have another mini review. I have played. I picked up Wayfinders, which is a game from Pandasaurus, which released last year, I believe, or even 2 years ago. It was on sale in the UK when I was back. It's a you can kind of see on the back of the box. It's sort of I would say it's almost like a spatial splendor or something like that. It's that kind of level. You're collecting these sort of colored resources in a this particular way. You kind of collect them, simple way, and then you're flying your plane around these islands, and you have to hand in like set collections of colors to build an airstrip on the island. That gives you points. Yeah, it was interesting. I think I was quite interested by the game because it uses a resource source to move. So each of the islands has a color, and to move to that island, you have to pay a resource of that color. So you're kind of using resources both for movement and for building. I thought that was quite interesting. Unfortunately, when I play it, and maybe I've read a little bit online that 2 players is not the best player count for it, and I've only played it at 2 players. I've played a couple of games. Yeah, it didn't quite do it for me, I'm afraid. It's just very okay. And it has a strange thing with like kind of the tempo of the game is not particularly because there are 2 different options you take. One is you're kind of preparing to take resources, so you put a worker out on this board, and that's you kind of saying where you want to take resources from, but you don't take them immediately. And then the other action you take is when you take back all your workers, you get all your resources and you start spending them basically. And it's just the turns where you place out workers are not very interesting. They're very quick, but it just feels like it settles into this sort of thing of like, I'm going to put my 5 workers out, then I'm going to get them all back, and then I'm going to fly around. And it doesn't mess with that tempo. I think with games where you have, a small number of possible actions, like take resources, spend resources, reserve something, I always think you want something to break up players from doing those actions always in the same order, because if you always do them in the same order, then it doesn't really feel like you have much of a choice, I guess. It just feels very rote. So, and of course, some of the best ways to do that is to have like tactical play between the players. So, like maybe I need to take this action before you're going to snipe it, or I see there's a resource there that I need to take, even though I'd prefer to be spending this turn, maybe. And it just didn't have that. Wayfinder. I think the other problem with Wayfinder is, and I think this is a 2-player problem, because the map stays the same size for the 2 to 4 players basically. And there's a little bit of a thing about the first person to an island, you pay the resources, but if you come to an island later, you can build there, but you pay the resources to the player who built there first. So of course, when there's more players, you're getting more in each other's way, and that comes more into play. But unfortunately, with 2 players, you basically can kind of ignore each other. You can just build where each other isn't, and most of the islands have roughly the same number of points. So it just it just fell a bit flat, sadly. But I definitely like to try it with a larger player count. Hey Mandela, welcome. Hope you're doing well too. I'm doing well. So there was a thing about jigsaws. I will take a look. I will probably take a look after the stream if that's all right. Yeah, I will. Yeah, but no, thanks. That's very much. Hey Theo, how you going? Welcome. I'm obviously I've caught Theo on a non-streaming morning, so yeah, thanks for dropping by. But so anyway, the other things, I guess, after last week's after last week's chatting about various controversies in the board game industry, I thought I'd chat about a couple of other things that sort of stirred my brain. This doesn't make much sense. Piqued my thoughts, maybe is better, this week. And the first is Actual LOL. So John Perkis runs a YouTube channel called Actual LOL, which I will now attempt to share on the screen. I'm not used to doing this in a single thing. He made a video called "The Problem with Board Game Sequels." So it's essentially a review of Railroad Inc. Challenge and Burgle Brothers 2. But he sort of took a wider point of view about board game sequels and what place they play in the hobby, and are they necessary? If you're a consumer, do you need to buy the new thing? Thanks very much, Bez. Thanks for putting the link up. Cheers. That's great. Yeah, so firstly, recommend if anyone hasn't watched it, go and watch it. I'm not really going to spoil anything. I think I'm just sort of adding my thoughts to John's. Yeah, and also thank you again, Bez. Give John, give Actual Lol a follow, a subscription or whatever on YouTube if you can. Yeah, he's one of those. Much like I love Efka and Elaine, for example. Hey, Xenophil, how are you going? Welcome. I love Efka Elaine as well, from no pun included, taking a sort of a longer view or kind of a wider view while still reviewing games, but seeing how they kind of connect together, how do they place in the wider hobby and things like that. And kind of boiling down John's thing, or what's the word? Summarizing it very quickly. I mean, it's basically saying, in a way, that these kind of sequels, and I should say there's a bit of a difference. These aren't expansions. He's not really talking about expansions per se. He's talking about when a game gets re-implemented as a sequel. And I think, where it's a standalone game, it takes a lot of aspects from the existing game, might add a few small things, but the core gameplay is essentially the same. And I have played Railroad Inc., the first game. Yeah, no, good point, Fez. I don't know. I've just always no. I think it's fine. I think it's not really like there's some secret at the end of the video. But maybe people really want to know what John thinks, and now I'm gonna spoil that. No. It's more. I guess the thing is that when you're responding to someone's video, I always think, obviously it's good if other people have also watched the video first, because it's easy to follow along. But anyway, so he's just sort of saying that the industry. The board industry, especially maybe things like Kickstarter, because both these games, Burgle Brother 2 and Railroad Inc. Challenge, were released through Kickstarter, or at least funded through Kickstarter. Sort of arguing about whether these games are actually necessary. Are they adding much to the first game? And if do you really need to own both? And then reflecting about why do these games get made in this current environment? And basically, I think John sort of came down to, well, they're not really better than the originals. They're equivalent. They have just as good gameplay as so you're kind of fine either way. Like either game, you'll get the experience, whether you get Burgle Brothers 1 or Burgle Brothers 2. There are some changes which improve some things, but there are other new things which maybe make a game a bit more complicated. So it means it loses a little bit of its simplicity, and that was part of its charm, because it was sort of quick and easy to play. And with Railroad Inc., for example, there's like an interesting new drafting variant, but then you have to have 4 copies of the game to even do that. So there's some positives, some negatives, but overall it's a bit of a wash. It's not a strict improvement over what came before. Anyway, that was sort of the argument, and the bigger argument about Kickstarter a little bit was just sort of talking about the kind of the proliferation of stuff that comes through Kickstarter, and this idea that that everybody wants lots of variability, and he says very clearly, like, variability does not equal replayability, but you see Kickstarters with loads and loads of stuff because publishers want to show that everything is like variable and you've got lots and lots to play. And his argument would be like, well, but is that a red flag when you see all those extra things being added? Is the publisher not actually confident enough in the core gameplay, thing? I guess Yogi Guru is another example of that. Although it's tricky, I guess. I think there's also a bit of a question of scale. Obviously it's probably very much easier to own both copies of Yogi, and in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Bez, you can basically mix them together, right? You can play them completely together. So Yogi Guru is kind of in this weird thing, is it's both an expansion and a standalone. But I may be wrong. Do put in the chat if I'm wrong in that kind of thought. Whereas these aren't really, Railroad Inc. is maybe closer, that you can kind of mix them together or use stuff together. Federica says, does this mean there won't be a Fast and Furious equivalent in board games? Oh wait, there's Carcassonne already. Well, it's interesting. He does make the point during the video about to akin to Hollywood. Like, that's why we see all these sequels and like franchises. And he mentions having lots of copies of Pandemic and Ticket to Ride, and this is not new in the board game industry. Once there's a popular brand, then publishers will tend to make more things in that brand, even if they are basically re-implementations. But I think his point is a little bit also just about with the Kickstarter and just the bloat of things. And it's interesting because I think John has a very clear, I guess, recommendation for folk, which is to, if possible, to try and support new publishers or people making new games, new experiments. He makes the point that the same people made Rail Ring, or the same designers who made, and the same publisher, I think, who made Rail Ring, also designed King's Dilemma, which is obviously this amazing new kind of experience, really, amazing experiment. And he's sort of saying, like, it wouldn't be great if we just see more of these new experimental, not experimental necessarily, but like new things that are moving into new space rather than like rehashes of existing games. And sort of saying to folks on Kickstarter, like, instead of just going in for the next Zombicide or the next implementation of the existing thing, maybe take a chance on a newer creator with a new idea that is a fresh take on things. Theo says there's something that scared me a little bit. Kickstarter is doing that, but big publishers are also doing spin-offs or licensed versions of games. I think it's and it goes, great publishers will publish the same game instead of bringing fresh games to the table. I mean, you see that there are definitely it's like, I don't want to say, but it is a little bit the Asmodee kind of thing, right? You see that they are, like, Asmodee is realizing that they have these certain properties within all their studios, and you're seeing it with Ticket to Ride, for example. I would say, I think both Ticket to Ride and Pandemic, that not just the normal mode that we used to have with Ticket to Ride, which was, I guess, it was variability. There were new maps and things like that. They're starting to think about, like, well, but can we position products in different spaces? Like, so they're producing these smaller versions of games which are at different price points. Potentially, I'm sure we'll have, they had the first Ticket to Ride, like a children's version of things. I think, it's obviously that's a safer bet for them, I guess. And sorry, Bezos says Yogi Guru is designed to work alone, but be best mixed with the original. Oh, great! So I was about right. It is a mix between expansion and standalone. Bez disagrees with John Theo. Having reimaginings or second edition doesn't mean that there are fewer fresh games necessarily. I think there are just going to be more and more of both. That is true. I guess it's just, maybe the thing is, I think that is true generally, and maybe we should shift a little bit away from, like, the Asmodee Ticket, because I think that's a bit of a specific case. I think there was a bit of a more general point about Kickstarter, and I think there is a bit of an argument on Kickstarter that there is a sense of like, people do have limited both attention, budgets and actual budgets, and when you have lots and lots of stuff on Kickstarter, I think the whole pie is growing. There's more money being pledged on Kickstarter all the time, but it's not completely, I think if you have a very big project, that can take away some oxygen from smaller projects that are running at the same time. And it's not to say that publishers are not going to do that. Publishers are going to do what makes money. Obviously, I'm also involved with kind of narrative games, which, you release many more versions of that. It's a little bit different because these games are one-off, so actually you do have to produce new things to be interesting. I guess I haven't been in this particular what's the word? Like, I haven't had any games myself happen for that. I guess I would agree with the point about Kickstarter, about this kind of expectation to have to add things now in Kickstarters. You can't have it's unfortunate that these simpler, smaller games just don't do as well on Kickstarter, and there is an underlying issue with that, just a kind of financial, kind of like structural problem in that, when you think about shipping small games, it's not as economical as a percentage as with larger games. You don't have the same kind of margins. And so you do see a certain type of game, and I think that's just baked into how the platform works. But you do get this kind of proliferation of stuff, and of course that happens. I've been in campaigns with my own games, which things get out, and of course the things I design, I try to design the best of my ability. But it does lead to games which are kind of like expanded or deluxeified, like straight away before seeing if something is sort of popular or not. Anyway, a really interesting video. And I think a lot of interesting things to kind of like digest, I guess. But thanks very much, John, and everyone. Go and check out John. Check out check out the video if you haven't already. Really thought provoking. And John has, this is not the first video he's made, which is really interesting and thought provoking. Do check out his other videos. He's a really great reviewer. I have lost my screen. Okay, hold on. Oops, there we go. We're back. Federico asks, when it is a game sequel versus a mechanic system sequel, if you allow me. An example is 18XX, where I don't mind sequels because I feel like a mechanic or a system sequel rather than a game sequel. Yeah, I guess, well, yeah, I mean, I think that is an interesting point. You could argue that a lot of the 18Xs are the same thing, that are sequels. I think there are bigger changes, realistically. And I think you would argue in some ways, well, from my scant understanding of 18Xs, is that you do kind of need a new game to have a different experience. There's a lot of variability in one game. You can play one game many, many times, but the fans of those games want new versions of them because they want to explore new maps or new systems of the stocks and things like that, or new rules. So there's kind of there is a market for that. And also, I guess the other thing is 18Xs don't, again, they're kind of serving a very set market who definitely wants this. I don't see it quite in the same way. I think they are more different, I guess, is my point. I think the video is much more about games which, are really quite close to each other, very close to each other, with very small differences between the sequels. And I feel like with 18Xs, there is a larger difference between the different games. But there's also I think that allowing people to do sequels, reimagining second editions, really allows folks to have better experiences. Selling games, changing some games was a big influence on me. Yeah, I think, and I mean, that is something that John reflects in the video. He does sort of talk about, like, is the game better? Would you sort of say that, like, this second edition makes the first edition not irrelevant, but is a complete improvement over it? And I think in the games where that is the case, then I think there's a strong argument for having that second edition, because you are specifically looking at feedback and improving the experience. And if you're making a better game, I don't think anyone can argue with that. But I guess the argument with these games specifically is that they're not really improving things. They're adding a few little things, but they're not really changing the core gameplay. So again, there's not that much difference between the two games. I think that feels like the crux of the argument. It's like the degree of change. And if the degree of change between the things is quite small, then it just feels like, well, we're just making more stuff that's not really treading any new paths, or it's not improving a gameplay experience or something like that. At least that's the way I kind of take it. But no, anyway. And there was also a bit of just sort of, this says, in 20, 100 years, no one will be playing the originals. I certainly continue to improve Wibble, Fail, Alphabetical, etc. Since the original release. Those rules are now wrong, and current rules freely available on my site. I think that's an interesting point. I don't know. I think some games, honestly, they don't have to change. Like, is No Thanks going to change? I don't think it's going to change. It's going to be the same. I mean, it might not be played at all, but if it's going to be played, I think the original will still be as good as it is today. I mean, of course, it's a bit easier with simpler games, but I think, Race of the Galaxy, I don't know if Race of the Galaxy needs to change realistically. Like, yes, they release new content to kind of freshen up, but that kind of core gameplay, I don't know if it needs to be re-implemented. I don't know. How do I align this with my own adventure games? Yeah. Well, and John does make the point about narrative games are a little bit of a different case. Any of these kind of one-play games are just by definition different, because you do have to. It's more. I would say it's more content than like sequel. It's closer to, it's the next novel in a book series or something, and it's how you continue the story or give new stories, and that's kind of necessary. There's kind of no other way to do it, is there? Unless you can make a game with lots of stories packed in the box, but of course then that's a bigger game. And Sherlock Holmes puts 10 stories in the box, but you still, once you get those 10, you can't play them again. So yeah, I think I just think it's a sort of a different case. It's a different publishing model because of the necessity of having to give new stories and the necessity that once you play the box once, you can't play it again. Because there was a bit of an argument about replayability, like with the original editions of these games, they were really replayable. You could play Railroading, 100 times and be very happy with it. You didn't necessarily need another game to do that. Whereas, we'll see. But saying if no thanks is perfect, then great. But if there is some actual brainwave, then that should be folded in. By the way, I wrote those 3 games because those 3 are the ones that changed. The others didn't. Even simple games didn't change. That's true. No, and I'm not making an argument that simple games can't change. I guess I just thought, for my view, this, something like no thanks. I don't know how you improve it, but you're right. There may be improvements in the future. But then, I guess, I think the whole argument is kind of moot if we always think that you're always going to be able to improve things. But of course, historically, we know that's not really true necessarily. Like chess it has been improved, it has changed, but the current version has been pretty standard for like a few hundred years or something. Around abouts, maybe with one extra rule. In I don't know when en passant came in. It was like 150 years ago. Someone check up the chess Wikipedia. And obviously that's like a specific example. But there are other kind of bigger games that haven't changed that much over time. So anyway, but we I guess we're not going to be here to probably know that or to kind of experience it necessarily. So it's kind of moot. And I think it's also very different releasing a reimagining of a game 20 years. I don't think this argument really is against if somebody goes like, oh yeah, this game was published, like 20 years ago, here's a remastered edition. I think that's a very different thing to like, this game was published 3 years ago. Here's my remastered edition. Yeah. But anyway, I don't. And then there was the other thing I sort of just sort of changing tack a little bit was talking about on Twitter, and I actually couldn't find the tweet this morning, unfortunately. It was Eric Sundin, who is a Swedish game designer. His first game, Whirling Witchcraft, that's a bit of a tongue twister, is just being released by AEG as part of their they have a kind of like Gen Con bundle thing on Kickstarter at the moment. Give that a check. Check it out. It's kind of a cool, kind of like potion building interactive kind of game. Really beautiful art, actually. Really, really lovely looking product. And Eric was sort of on Twitter, was sort of asking game designers, how do you deal with reviews of your game? Do you consume them all? Do you try to do you try to ignore it? Oh, hi, Haven Goblin. You tried to sign Willow Shot. Yeah, good game. Well, it's sounds like a good game. And sorry you missed out, but I'm hopefully you're glad that the game got made anyway. Anyway, and it was like, do you try to ignore reviews completely? Do you like gorge yourself on them? How do you sort of deal with that? That kind of got me thinking about it. It's actually interesting. I didn't necessarily show it even before the stream today. I was reminded of it again because I was checking the echoes on. And there are a few reviews on the Talia website already of the Echoes games from Talia employees who must, I guess, have played them a little bit earlier. And there are a few not so. There was one okay review. There were a few like negative points, and already that got me thinking and back into the thinking about how you deal with reviews. And my point was, and I think if any designers in the chat, please put your thoughts on how you sort of deal with the reviews. From my point of view, I can't really help myself. I find it very difficult to ignore. I'm quite plugged into board game media generally. I like it that way. For me, it really helps me to be inspired and think of new games and to see where are new innovations happening in the board game world, and how can you fold them into new designs? How can you mix and match them? I love not knowing what's coming out and what people like and where where tastes are going. I think that's an important part for me being a designer. It's not a necessary thing, but for me it works well. Anyway, but because of that, it's very hard to sort of like ignore reviews because that's part of that ecosystem. So I replied to Eric and said, it's not good for me, but I pretty much read everything. And you just have to like remember, well, I think you just have to schedule like away time somehow. You have to find ways to, especially when a new game is getting released. I think it's good to plan some positive Oh, Anthony. Okay, hey, how you going? Sorry, yeah, didn't know. Yeah. How you going? Nice to see you, Anthony. Juego of Play for Keeps and Osprey Games. Fantastic developer, publisher. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah, but but I think planning something positive for during that kind of reason, because I guess there's when your game's released, probably in like the first couple of weeks where you're going to see it. There's always like a couple of week period where most of the reviews will happen, probably. And I think planning something positive before that you kind of can that you can sort of do something different, or kind of get away, or just kind of refresh, I think is quite important. It's very hard to, at least for me, I can't. It's my reaction to reviews is quite subconscious, especially negative reviews. It's not really a reasoned, conscious response. You just feel there is a gut feeling of like, it would have been nice if they'd liked that game, or it's a pity they don't, And for me, I find it very hard to consciously change that. I can't sort of go like, okay, Matthew, time to be happy, and that's mental health for you, I guess. But having things planned that will at least take your mind off that and let you focus on something else, I think is quite important, because it can be very easy to kind of like go down the rabbit hole of reading lots of reviews and things like that. Rob says, I've not quite got to the point of seeing reviews of my games. Comments on BGG are a gentle warm-up. Yes, that's true. And comments can sometimes in some ways be, better or worse, because, in a shorter format, people can be a bit more blunt, I guess, with how they feel. I think it's very hard, especially when you really start and it's like your first game, because you don't have a lot of experience with that. You don't have anything else to kind of go off. And I guess the lucky thing for me is that, especially if I have having a bit of a rough review season, if a particular game has been released and not being reviewed very well, I do kind of selfishly go back and look at old reviews to sort of cheer me up where people did like the game. Federico says, gotta go, leave you with a question. See you, Federico. Have a great day. Meditation to deal with bad reviews. It's not a bad idea. I mean, I think meditation generally is quite valuable. I'm not sure if Teo is still around, but Teo put me on to, oh yeah, well, there you go. There you go. Teo put me on to meditation, and I think, Teo, you still meditate daily, I believe. I unfortunately fell off the bandwagon, but I did sort of daily meditate for several months. And it is quite valuable. And I think, probably dealing with bad reviews is quite valuable. But Teo says, I can't stop looking at them, and I'm still really touched, still really affects you, but I'm working on it. Well, I mean, I think, I don't think it's a bad thing that it affects us as designers. If the reviews didn't affect us at all, I think that would speak to a much bigger problem. Like, if we don't care whether people like our games or not, then it's hard to say that I'm making games for the art or to create something. I'm also creating games that hopefully people enjoy. That's the whole point of them. So you're going to be sensitive to that, and if you don't hit that mark, then it's going to hurt. But it hurts because you care, and that's probably a good thing. So that's another thing to kind of remember: the fact that you care, or the fact that you have a negative feeling. Well, that's actually a positive thing. That means you have some empathy, or you have some desire to give an experience to someone that they can enjoy. It's not just for you, like designing games. You have to be happy. I think you have to definitely be happy in yourself making games, because yes, you're going to have negative reviews, and if you yourself aren't kind of happy with what you're doing, then that's very difficult. And I guess that's a general point for life. But at the same time, you do get happiness giving happiness to other people through things you create. And so when you don't get that feeling disappointed is perfectly fine, I think. I think for me, the main thing in terms of kind of management or kind of mental health things generally is just to try to have strategies not to get stuck in that feeling. It's fine to feel that's normal, but finding ways out of that, or to kind of switch your focus, because it can be very, very easy to like scroll through all the comments on one of your games and like see what people are thinking, and see all the red 5s and 4s and 3s on 4G Geek or whatever, and you get defensive, or especially when people play something wrong, or they don't see the point of something. That elicits that kind of reaction. Again, all perfectly normal, but I think finding a way out of that, finding a way to sort of go like, oh, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go outside, play some sport, or I'm going to have a nice dinner planned, that I can look forward to. I've got this game just to play this day to just play games with friends. I mean, obviously right now everything's a bit difficult, but it's getting better. And having those times, or I'm just going to have a nice dinner, is a good way to kind of get out of that a little bit and give yourself perspective, or at least a bit of distance. Also, a matter of taking the bad and the good. Yeah. It's a very good point. Most of the times, a bad review affects me, but not a good one. Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's that someone's going to give me the real word for it, but like we're biased towards negativity, or it has like we have a greater emotional response to negative things, or things we kind of disagree with. And also there's like a little bit of societal, not pressure, but we kind of tear people down for like saying like, oh, look at me, I'm so good, look at this amazing review, blah blah blah. And I think unfortunately that filters in like in a very deep place in our heads where we can't even personally enjoy it for ourselves. We feel like we shouldn't be doing that. And it's a really good point there, actually. Like you've got to work on also enjoying the good reviews, because that's and it's the same, I think, also in enjoying when a game actually gets released. When you get to hold a game in your hand, it's a slightly different thing. But often, sometimes when you finish a game or you see it, you only see the imperfections, or you only remember like the difficulties, or like, oh gosh, this game should have come out 2 years ago or something, or you focus on all those negatives rather than the fact that, oh holy crap, this idea that just came from my head is now a physical thing, and other people can play it, and not kind of remembering that really positive thing. So yeah, it's a really, really good point. Hey Aqua, Alex, how are you going? Is it a kind of loss aversion? Maybe, I don't know, actually. I think there is something. I mean, it's similar, right? When people sort of talk about like on YouTube or social media that you get more engagement when you interact with something that you disagree with than something you agree. And so I guess when you see a negative review, you probably disagree with it on some level, or it doesn't. Negativity bias, yeah. Well, there you go. Sounds about right. You have a greater response to that than you would a positive review, which I guess you broadly agree with. You would hope, or they're seeing the same things you see in the game. So, but that being said, and to his point about celebrating the bad and the good, I do celebrate the good definitely to get me out of the bad. It is a really nice thing to read comments, like good comments on your games on Board Game Geek, even if there are only a few of them, because it just reminds you that this game, while maybe it didn't reach all the audience, it did at least for some people. It's a great game, and they still play it. I think the other thing that kind of always lifts me up a little bit is when I see a comment on a game, a very old game, because that's the other kind of thing, like the kind of churn of games at the moment. You'll release something, it has its 2 weeks in the sun, and then it goes away, and that can be a bit sad. Like you put a lot of work into these things, but actually reading reviews or comments when somebody's just discovered a game you played, you designed a long time ago, or they're making a comment saying, oh yeah, we've played it all this time, is a really nice, it's just a nice feeling to make you feel like, oh yeah, I designed something that had a bit of longevity, or that people can still enjoy. It wasn't just because the market is the way it is and everything has to is always a bit of a flash in the pan and goes through so quickly. You don't have to, it doesn't mean it's the same for everybody, and that your games can find at least one person that's going to enjoy them and keep playing them. So that's a good thing too. I have not been drinking much tea, so I'm going to have a slight bit of tea. Still hot. Hey Jay, how you going? Welcome, Jay Fullscud. So yeah, we're coming up on almost on the hour. Got about 10 minutes left. So yeah, if anyone else has, I'll throw the floor open. I don't have any other sort of topics that I had sort of queued up in my head to talk about. So if anyone has any sort of questions or things, do pop them in the chat. I should say thank you everyone for joining. It's nice to know that even though I've been a bit irregular with my streaming, not everyone's abandoned me. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, if you have any plans that you're doing the next week, let me know. What are you doing in terms of designing, in terms of gaming, anything like that? Yeah, it would be good to know. The other game that I've kind of rediscovered, I guess, rediscovered because I had the game is called Five Tribes by Bruno Cathala. It's a Days of Wonder game. I'm sure some number of people have heard of it. It's a fantastic game. Probably in time could get into my sort of top 10, I expect. It's a rare breed of, again, what I call kind of spatial Euros. These games which, these kind of Euro games with a strong spatial component, and uses kind of Mancala mechanism in a really interesting way. It's an older game. I think it's about 3 or 4 years old now. but I'd played it a long time ago. I played it a few times and really loved it, really enjoyed it. And I played it at the same time where I didn't. Game jam redeem. Okay, all right. You have redeemed it, all right, Bez. Okay, I'll finish my thoughts on Five Tribes very quickly. Then we'll have a quick game jam. No. I'm happy to, Bez. But anyway, long story short, I had finally found a secondhand copy of Five Tribes on eBay when I was still in the UK, and I bought it, and it was on the way, and then it arrived about 1 day or 2 days after I left very suddenly at the start of the pandemic last year. So it's been sitting, still packaged in Cambridge for like a year and a half or whatever. And when I went back to the UK, I was able to pick it up, and now I can play it. So that's nice. So we've already played it a couple of times with Tracy, and I think she likes it. She won the first game. I think she wanted me to make sure I said that Tracy had won the first game. So no, we've enjoyed it quite a bit. It's actually also a really nice 2-player game. You play kind of 2 pawns each. So yeah, it's really good. Theo says, "Oh, talking about Five Tribes, love it, but you have to make a contract with your players to play quick." Yes, it is. It is certainly a game that can be very analysis paralysis, and yeah, I think having it is one of the few games of having like a turn timer. I think would be perfectly reasonable. Saying like you've got, you have 30 seconds to make your turn. It is a bit tricky because every time someone makes a turn, it kind of changes everything for everybody else, possibly. But yes, you do have to kind of have that trust of just like, let's just play it and realize there may be a better move, but I'm just going to, go with my gut and do it like that. Anyway, Bez, so we're going to jam, make an L deck game. Now, it would be great if I could just turn to my shelf over here and have an L deck, because I think I do have one, but I don't know where it is. Oh, okay, I've got some Bez stuff here. Do I have it? Oh, yes, I have Wibble. Here we go. Because that's going to help me be a bit, help me with a bit of inspiration. It's not always going to be the case that I'm going to be able to like turn to my right and just pick up the game that I need. But it worked. It worked well this time. So. I have to admit, Bez, I haven't kept up with the really large number of games that have been made for the L deck. So I may end up talking about something that's already been made, but you can tell me if it's wrong. So I'm going to look. So for those who aren't aware of the L deck, and I guess, Bez, you could tell me if this, because I guess this is the first edition. I'm not sure if it's changed a lot in the subsequent editions, but anyway, it's made up of different cards. Each card has 2 letters. It also has a numerical value, and it has a different pattern of the border. And I think there are 6. I believe there are 6 different patterns, and there's some distribution of the numbers and letters. No one has. Anyway, so there've been lots of word games and things like that. What would I want to do? What would I want to do with this? I mean, have anyone done something sort of like almost like every suit has senorita on top? Oh, in terms of the letters, I see. So there's kind of like an even distribution of the letters across the things. I mean, I would be tempted to do something like Boggle, sort of talking about spatial, like laying out like a grid of the cards and then having to like worm your way through to make words potentially. Maybe you get to claim, maybe and the other thing that could be kind of interesting is that, it could be like a sort of a Scrabble thing that you get to. Maybe you could use the numbers. So yeah, so say you had a grid like a 4x4 or a 3x3 or a 3x4, something like that. I feel like somewhere between 9 to 16 cards would be the number. We play in turns, going around. You have to make a word. Maybe there's probably kind of like normal kind of restrictions. Probably has to be at least 3 letters, something like that. And the word you have to be able to trace it through the grid, essentially. I'm not going to be able to put it on. It's a bit hard to hold it up on the screen. But as you trace through the word, your score is whatever the highest numbered card was in that word, and that's the number of points. Now you can tell me, Bez, whether the numbers are they kind of roughly like Scrabble, but the higher numbers are on the kind of harder to use letters, or are they kind of it? It looks like they're kind of random, but yes, one letter from each card. Oh no, the opposite. Okay, so lower numbers are the kind of less sort of present, the harder to use letters. Okay, so I would say that actually then you score. Well, I guess you could kind of flip it away then. You would score like the lowest number, and the object is to get the lowest score. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, thanks very much for dropping by, and safe trip. Enjoy your travels, and thanks for dropping by. Yeah, exactly, like golf scoring. So yeah, exactly. So you would score the lowest number. So like, say I had these 3 cards, and I managed to make the word. Actually, that's not a very good example. Oh gosh, let's find something. Okay, like say I said like can, like CAN, and I sort of traced through these, and because they were in such a way, like they were in such a way that I could, just trying to see, that's the A, like something like that, like, so I can go to the C and then the A to the N, so that's can. So then I would score the lowest number of all the numbers there. So the lowest number is a 2. And that is, I would take that card and just put it in front of me. That's my score. So I remove from the grid and I deal 1 card in it. So it means that the grid changes for each of the players so that people can't make the same word. I mean, they could make the same word if there's no restriction on like making the same word as someone else, because hopefully the cards will change. So you'll have to change it. And at the end of the game, it's just whoever has the lowest number in front of them. And maybe you could have some other small things like, if you made a long enough word, maybe you're allowed to like discard a card from your collection or something. Like you could discard like the highest numbered card. So if you made like a 6-letter word or a 7-letter word or something like that, then you would be able to, like, you could choose a card from your discard pile and discard it, so you get rid of something. So there's us. The numbers represent the frequency, inverse difficulty of the lower letter. Would you only let folks score by using those lower letter, since the top letter is always an easy one? I see. Okay. That is a good point. Yeah, why not? Yeah, you could say that you have to use at least 1 lower letter, and then the card you claim is whichever card that you use the lower letter of that has the lowest number. So there you go. So you have to, yeah, it's like lower, isn't it? Like you have to use 1 lower letter, and then you want the lowest valued card of the like the lowest of the low. You could call it Lowell or something if you wanted something like that. So yeah, I guess that, yeah. So you have to use at least 1 of the lower letters, which I did in my example because I used C. But in that example, when I said CAN, and people can't really see that, because C is the only lower letter, then I would have had to claim the 4, which is obviously not as good. It would have been better if I could do something with the P maybe, and then I could say, yeah, it's not going to work. I can't say pon or pob or something, but yes, bop. I could say bop. For example, I could try and do bop, which is, oh my gosh, which is BOP, and then B and P were both lower letters, but 2 is the lower one, so I can take that. And then, so yeah, okay. Well, good to hear that someone hasn't done it before. 1 from the bottom, please go. Is that a reference from like some UK television? Is it like what's the word? What's the not like Countdown? Thank you. That's what I was thinking of. But anyway, so yeah, there you go. So Lowell, there you go, Bez. Deal out a grid of cards. Obviously, we'd have to test a little bit whether it should be like 3x4 or 4x4. Make a word, which is you have to be able to trace through the cards, 1 letter per card. It must be at least 3 letters long. You must use at least 1 of the lower letters. Once you've made your word, you claim, you look at all the cards which you use the lower letter of, and you take a card of your choice which has the lowest number. So if there was a tie, you would choose 1 of them. And you take it off the board, put it face down in front of you. That's your score. And then you deal a new card from the deck, replacement, and then the game goes until you go through the deck, or you get sick of it. I don't know. Maybe that would be about the right thing. at the end of the game, reveal your score pile. Whoever has the lowest number of points scored. Game jammed. Stop the clock. Yeah. And I guess the only other thing is maybe it could have a special rule like making, if you make at least a 6 or 7, I don't know, 6-letter word or a 7-letter word, you get to discard a card. Not only do you the card you would take that turn, you would still take the card, but then you're allowed to discard any one card from your score pile, and obviously you discard a higher valued one if you could. There you go. Great. Done. Hope that was okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you for that, Bez. Thank you for everyone for dropping by. And I think that will do us. Bez, are you streaming today or not? Or because we would normally now raid you, but you seem to be here. So I don't know what's happening exactly. Only streaming on Tuesday. Okay, no worries. So yeah, I can have a quick look and see if there's anybody we could raid. Yeah. Where do I raid? It's been a while since. Oh, there's the button. There's that big button. Yeah, there's not a lot of people on actually. Yeah, maybe we won't raid today. Actually, there's not really anybody. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, thanks very much. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess this game jamming in the analog world is very different to game jamming in the digital world. But we have to do something. We have to game jam. I really want to do a digital game jam sometime, but I have to find a developer who's going to put up with the fact that I'm not a coder. But yeah. Jay, yeah, I've gone down to basically only streaming Wednesdays, but I am going to be trying to be regular on Wednesday mornings at this time. So that's my commitment. I've kind of recommitted to that. So yeah, I'm going to be trying to be more. I have to hope that every week I read something controversial on Twitter, which is probably going to be quite consistent. So that's usually the thing that helps me give me some idea of something to talk about, which is good. Last time I did a jam, it went on for weeks. I feel the value of proposition. Well, actually, that game is still going, and we might have news. There's a new publisher even bubbling away in the background that may come around. So there might be some interesting news to talk about with Continents. And I actually went back to Continents yesterday, and I'm gonna keep working on it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Great. Well, yeah. Oh, Amadeus. Yeah, we could check out Amadeus. Okay, so let's raid over to some music. Hope everyone has a fantastic day. And week and everything. And yeah, I guess I'll be back next week as normal. But yeah, have a great day, and thanks very much for dropping by. And take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye.